Australia's government has unveiled its latest budget, and it is indicative of the country's slowing growth. Now that its mining boom is over, the country's finance minister says the budget will encourage broader-based growth. Greg Navarro has been following this. He joins us live in Sydney with the exact details. Greg.
Michelle, last night the federal treasurer said this budget was designed to encourage Australians to have a go. That means basically to invest in the economy. And there are certainly some optimistic areas and parts of this budget that on paper are designed to do that, such as massive tax cuts for small businesses and childcare subsidies to help encourage parents back into the workforce. But no matter what the federal treasurer said last night, what the Prime Minister has said this morning cannot escape the fact that Australia's budget has a massive hole, tens of billions of dollars, that was put there by plummeting iron ore prices.
Australian Treasurer Joe Hockey appeared confident and relaxed at public events leading up to the Wednesday release of the 2015 budget.
Revealed my map already. It was meant to be a surprise.
The latest and more subdued budget includes tax cuts for small businesses, an increase in national security spending, and a tightening of pension rules. Prime Minister Tony Abbott's government hopes the budget will be better received than the administration's first attempt last year. Much of that budget was rejected by the Senate and almost cost Abbott his job.
The current government found was that when they start threatening people with aggressive cuts to pensions or welfare or whatever, that hangs over people, and it results in a loss of confidence.
Australia's central bank has tried to boost confidence in spending through 2 rate cuts this year. But the nation's biggest problem is tied to iron ore, which created a wave of economic prosperity that lasted for more than 2 decades.
Australia was so dependent on income generated from iron ore at a premium price paid by Chinese consumers that it left the country in a very vulnerable position.
Economists say China's slowing economy has led to a drop in Australia's ore exports and an overabundant supply. The price of iron ore plummeted, leaving a huge hole in the nation's economy. Hockey estimates there will be a loss of about $25 billion in revenue this year alone.
There's no way you can fill this gap. It's almost mathematically impossible to fill this gap.
That's why the Abbott government has presented a budget with an optimistic eye on savings in several areas. The government also announced what's being billed as a world-leading tax crackdown on about 30 international companies, including Google and Microsoft, which the federal treasurer said are diverting profits made in Australia outside of Australia without paying their fair share of taxes.
Yes, it helps shore up the budget. It's part of, I guess, many measures that are necessary in this sort of environment, but it's not going to turn around the loss of revenues seen from the collapse in the iron ore price.
Hockey has said the government will beat this year's deficit projections of more than $40 billion, but the treasurer knows that it will take much more than optimism and confidence to fill that kind of economic void.
And in fact, the treasurer said that the budget deficit for this year will come in at around $35 billion, again below expectations. You have to remember budgets all around the world generally have an eye on politics, and in this case it has an eye on the next election. The federal government would certainly like people to remember this budget, forget about the last budget mess. In fact, there are grumblings here this morning that the current government, Tony Abbott's government, is planning to call an early election, something Tony Abbott has so far denied. But again, all of this points to the fact that Australia has quite a long way to go in tackling a budget deficit. Michelle?
Absolutely, Greg. Always political considerations in the background. Now, in the meantime, Australia has a very good credit rating, AAA with S&P and Moody's. How is all of this going to affect it, if in any way?
Well, it appears at this point that prized, as you mentioned, AAA rating is safe, and that's because those agencies are taking a look at projected deficit reductions as well as the government's relatively low debt. So that's the good news. The bad news is that the price of iron ore is where it is, and it has rebounded slightly, but it will not rebound enough, many people agree here, to hark back to the days of the mining boom when it fueled Australia's economy. Michelle?
All right, yeah, I'm going to have to leave it there. Thank you so much, Greg Navarro, live for us in Sydney.